Hello, this is Brianna Hilton. I'm here with Liz Churton. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me to discuss stuff.
No worries, no worries. As your business venture into visual communication, has this been success? And there's obviously been success of expansion, which is really, really good. What are your thoughts on the launch at the beginning, or like, what was your vision?
Well, a lot of businesses, and this is a really good example of this, sort of occur almost organically or naturally. It's not like I had a vision, as it were, and then I thought, oh, I'm going to launch a business. In fact, to be honest with you, I've been working as a freelancer since I retired. I mean, I'm 61, right? So I retired from the teaching profession 6 years ago when I was 55. And I've always been a creative person, and I've always used visual communication in the classroom, and communication is a passion of mine. So, having retired from the profession and been in senior management for a significant period of time, eventually I thought, well, I want to do something. And so I started working freelance for a number of people that have started their own businesses, people that wanted people that wanted some visual communication during their meetings. And it evolved rather than having a sort of, you know, Leonardo da Vinci moment where I've got this vision and I want to create it overnight. It,
Yeah.
it, it, it has, and it still is, and it hopefully always will be evolving. At the same time, I'd started a PhD, that was 3 years ago, with the Northern Film School in Leeds, at Leeds
Mhm.
University. And so I was pursuing that, and I was doing a lot of drawing. My drawing was getting better, and I was looking into, in terms of my research practice, I was looking into visual thinking as a concept and something that I've been always interested in as an educator. And I thought, hang on a minute, there are all sorts of things coalescing here. All my experience of 26 years in the teaching profession, the stuff I'm doing for my PhD research, which is around visual thinking, um, and the stuff that I'm doing as a freelancer that I'm getting not bad money for. Um, and then what happened was um, a colleague of mine invited me to do some digital visual presentation last June at an event at Magna in Rotherham. And it was an event which was launching a 5 year project called the Children's Capital of Culture. And during that event, there were a lot of speakers, and I was drawing whilst they were all speaking. And one of the speakers was a young woman, a 23-year-old, who had quite recently graduated from Norwich University in animation, which is also something that I do. And we got talking, and I was getting to know her work. And by the end of the event, we were talking a lot more. Um, and and actually, it was that event that sparked the idea that I think there is a need for this sort of work on a more regular basis. And we got a gig, the two of us together from that event. And so we had a bit of an event for um, South Yorkshire Mayoral Authority, which was a visioning event, which also happened in June, July time. We did that together. And I launched the limited company as a result of that. I needed a company to be able to basically take in the finance for the first gig that we had. And it came from there. And it's a long answer to your question, but I'm hoping that I've answered
I
it
want
in
to
that.
know, yes, no, it's good.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I mean the main thing is that evolution is continuing to happen basically.
Good, that's good. So with your business, what it's called is Rotherham-based visual futures.
Yeah.
And as I said, it's growing, and as you mentioned, it's also very expanding. You've hired or enlisted a freelancer animator, Tasha Poland. Why hire her or like enlist her specifically? Like what? Who is?
Well, yeah, going back to what I was just talking about, Natasha, this is the same person. So there's a number of reasons for that. Number one, she was there when the ideas were being sparked, and I was very impressed by her ability to be able to think both expansively and sort of a business head on her as well. But second, I was party to seeing her present on a stage in front of, there were probably 300 people in the room, in the conference room in Magna. So that was also impressive. And thirdly, she can draw. and that's really important. And to be honest with you, young people coming out of art school, many of them can't draw. And yeah, I see that face that you're pulling, and I can unpack that further with you if you wish. But that's a really, really important skill. So I'm sort of collecting people for future things as we expand, because I don't see it as I see it as we, because Natasha's becoming much more an integral part of the company, if you like. So I don't just see her. She is a freelancer and she does work as an illustrator for herself, but she is becoming an integral component, particularly with animation work, because you can't do it on your own. It's a long process. But yeah, so those are the reasons why. And again, it wasn't like, oh, I've made this company. Now I think I might, oh, I've got some gigs coming up. I need a freelancer. That doesn't work. It comes, the networking comes first. The ideas come second, because it comes out of those interrelationships through the networking events.
Right. That makes a lot of sense, to be fair, that the networking comes first and then the ideas. I didn't think of that, but that makes sense.
No. I've sort of built that up through being an educator, but I've never actually said it out loud until quite recently. And yeah, that's my experience now.
Right. Well, since you've mentioned it, that you are an educator at Affinity and you're currently studying your PhD in visual communications, what are your thoughts on some people sticking to the traditional way of communication rather than seeing the improvement in the way you want to broaden communication? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I presume traditional communication, we're talking about written communication, aren't we? Which is always going to have its place, let's face it. However, we are living in undoubtedly a multimedia culture. And to be honest, whether we like it or not, it is a fact that much of communication is visual. You look at your phone so many times a day, and most of the stuff that you take in is visual communication. And actually, and the science is disputed, but there's definitely something in this. In terms of visual communication, you can actually reach people much more faster because people are multitasking. And I think multitasking is overrated, but we're doing it.
Yeah.
And therefore, for all of those things, people are seeing the importance of being visually literate. And for me, if you're not visually literate, then you're just bombarded with all sorts of things. And you can either feel overwhelmed or misinformed, or probably both. But in terms of educating people around the importance of that, there is a lag going on. There's no doubt about that. So on the one hand, there is an acknowledgement that we are surrounded by visual communication. But on the other hand, people are still not understanding how that can come into their own organisation. So as Visual Futures, what I'm doing a lot of is educating people in, I think you could probably do with a bit more visual communication within your whole toolkit, So every time I get a piece of work, there is a degree of education to do with what we're doing. And I think once people see that integrating a visual mode of communication into their whole toolkit, they then say, oh, we could do that next time, and we could do it this way. And they start to co-design what they want.
I agree. But in what aspect do you think that Rotherham-based visual futures will not only revolutionize the community, but how would it build trust between the audience and the businesses?
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I did do a bit of homework in terms of looking at the sorts of things that were out there. There are individuals that do graphic scribing and graphic facilitation, and those individuals usually mainly illustrators that do a bit of that on the side. In terms of limited companies out there, there's a handful. There's in this country, there's probably those that I don't know about, but I wouldn't thought there was more than 10 in the whole country. There's nothing like what we do in South Yorkshire. And in terms of revolutionising, I wouldn't use that word. I'd say, because that's a bit, that's this is an evolution, and this is a adaptation and integration. So this isn't a revolution at any point. This is just a gradual incorporation of what I'm doing, really. And people will look back in 3 years' time, and they'll say, "God, we've come a long way in integrating this way of working." In terms of accessibility to audiences, I think what happens, and I was doing some work only yesterday in a primary school with an oral storyteller. I think about this every time I do something within a public space. If you're drawing their ideas very quickly in a public space, they immediately recognize that their ideas are up there, whether you're doing it, with a felt tip pen on a board or digitally that's on a big, screen. They see their ideas almost immediately. You can draw an idea in a fraction of the time that it takes to write a paragraph. So the accessibility is, almost immediate, and it acknowledges that people's ideas and people's thoughts and co-creation processes are acknowledged and will be used.
Written communication will always be around. To what degree do you think that future presentation led by dialogue will still be the main form of communication?
I think that's a really interesting question, and I'm not sure if I can answer it, to be honest. Again, going back to what I said in the previous answer, it's going to be always something that we do. Speech to writing applications are getting better and better, and I use them, particularly when I'm doing stuff with students. And I bet students are doing it far more than they used to. So I think the actual manual dexterity of writing, in fact, we're already seeing it in young people anyway, is getting weaker. So I think as a natural evolutionary process, less and less young people are actually going to write.
That is quite true. I do believe that.
Whether we like that or not. However, the manual dexterity is still really important. And going back to what I said much earlier, with that, the drawing abilities are also disappearing. And that's a concern, actually, because digital ways of working are almost, taking over anything that you do with your hands. But the interesting part of that, and we were doing a lot of digital stuff a few months ago, but there's a real acceptance of, actually, we like the imperfections of your drawings on a big sheet of paper rather than on your iPad that's projected on the screen. So, I think this evolution is going through an interesting stage, and we're just going to have to be responsive to what's happening, in arenas of communication. But I love the fact that I'm going back to, pencil and paper, and writing on, and drawing on paper. So as with all these things, they go through oh, this is great and this is all really fashionable, but actually then you notice what you've missed. And I think there'll be a gradual coming together of both digital and real life types of communication, really.
Right, well, I have a quote from you. If you don't mind, I'm going to read it out now. In the future, I aim to use the rest of the funding for publicity and joining the Rotherham Pioneer Group. That was what you said.
Yeah.
My question is there any other future plans, goals, or wishes you want to achieve for your business?
I think we've got enough at the moment to be getting on with for the rest of this year. And I think what will happen as a result, because one commission, because we're working on commissioning really, it leads to other things. So we're working on an animation, a 3-minute animation, for instance, for Rotherham Council, for the Looked After Children's Council. So that sort of work, working with young people, working with getting ideas out as a way of them reaching a wider community. I mean, more of those sorts of commissions, I think, may come as a result of that, and that would be great. But as a result of that, the team would have to expand. So the animation side of things, I think, is probably something which will expand as we move forward. So yeah, I mean, I think in 3 years' time, we could be looking at, I don't know, 5 people in the team, maybe.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining me, Liz.
That's okay.
Have an amazing day, and I wish you all the best in your business.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.